warm welcome to all the participants to this webinar on secrets of storytelling, emotional connections to elevate your public speaking. I'm Fazli Karim from AIT Extension, and I will try to moderate this session. The speaker will have around 30 minutes, which will be followed by question and answer session. The participants are encouraged to post their questions in the chat box or Q&A box. All the questions will be compiled and the speaker will address them after the session. So please feel free to post your questions in the chat box or in the Q&A box. It's my privilege to introduce the speaker, Mr. Mario Di Pinto. Mr. Mario Di Pinto is a consultant in strategy, public policy, and communication. He graduated in international economics and management at Bocconi University in Milan and completed his studies at the London School of Economics and Cambridge University. He has served a wide range of clients, including the World Economic Forum, measuring the impact of geospatial services on African agriculture and mining sector. INSEAD research paper on talent on the move for the French government, Netflix, Geoscience Australia, as well as startups in the bioenergy and fashion industry. In the field of lifelong learning, Mario was a guest lecturer in strategy and communication at Nanyang Business School in Singapore, Chinese University of Hong Kong, Yale NUS, IE Business School, and Università Rome III. He also worked on executive education projects for Amazon, JLL, and Post Italian. Mario was in the founding team of the World Economic Forum Global Shapers Buddy Hub and was included in the 2022 Forbes Under 30 list. I would again request all the participants that at the end of this session, he will be addressing all your questions as far as possible, obviously. And it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Mario Di Pinto to start his seminar. Mr. Mario Di Pinto.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction. And thank you also to the AIT Extension team for organizing this webinar. Actually, I was glad to receive the invitation because in my experience, I've often seen companies and professionals underestimating the impact of emotions and feelings in their communication, in the way they were communicating with clients, with colleagues, with other companies. So today we have the chance to get a taste of some of the basic foundations of storytelling. And to be more precise, this is the agenda which we will quickly follow today. So we will start by seeing how the concept of emotions in communication has been relevant since the past, since Greek philosophers, and how it is related also to the modern business world. Then we will see how also science has proven these techniques to be really effective. Then we will delve into what really makes a good story. What are the strategies we should follow? What are the key ingredients we should include to make our messages truly compelling? And finally, we will be also taking a look at some tips to improve public speaking. So what are some frameworks or again, quick advices to really be more compelling and effective when delivering messages in public? So we often hear statements like facts tell, stories sell. And I find this very true. For instance, if we think about advertising, we see a lot of commercials where we're not just taking a look at products features, but we watch people's stories, and are really those stories that make us connected to that product, that make us want to buy it. There's also another definition I really like, which was formalized by Brené Brown. She's a professor at the University of Houston. And what she says is that stories are data with a soul. They illuminate, inspire, and illustrate. Now, the fact that a lot of these statements, also this definition, include words like facts, data, already lets us understand that stories are not just things we share when we are, I don't know, with friends, with people we know, with our family. Stories are things that can make communication really, really effective and really compelling in every context. And this is actually something about which also the man you see here in this picture was thinking about. He is Aristotle, one of the very well-known Greek philosophers. And when thinking about communication, Aristotle found out that communication can basically be divided into three parts, which are namely ethos, logos, and pathos. But what do these Greek words really mean? So ethos is about credibility. It's about your credibility as a speaker. So for instance, maybe you have been working in the oil and gas industry for 20 years. So that's why you know what you're talking about. And that's why people should listen to you. You know what you're saying. You're a credible speaker. The second part is logos. So these words sound a little bit more familiar, means logic. So it's about all the rational connections between the things we are saying. If this happens, then A, B, C, and D should happen after it. Or maybe based on this data, based on this figure, we can state that X, Y, Z. And finally, we have pathos. Pathos is related to the emotions and feelings that people may actually feel while we are communicating with them. It might be with friends, might be a public speech, it might be a presentation pitch in a boardroom. Now, usually when I like to ask this question, I like to ask people which of these three parts they think is the most important one in a corporate context. And I would say that 9 out of 10 people tell me ethos or logos, as they believe that being a credible speaker and providing people with reliable, rational information is what really makes a well-qualified professional. But actually, what I think is that we should also start to take into consideration pathos. We should start to take into consideration how emotions can make our messages memorable. Back in 2012, this American lawyer, is called Brian Stevenson, delivered a TED Talk presentation. And in that year, they were running surveys and they were asking to the audience which was their most favorite presentation. And his presentation was the one that won the prize. They did something more. They started to investigate actually what were the communication levers involved in that speech, which was, again, the audience's favorite one. And what they found out was that actually, yes, of course, the ethos was there. It was one of the most known US lawyers. The logos was there too. Again, he was saying rational things. His statements were logically connected. But at the same time, 70% of his communication was built on emotion. And again, this was what truly engaged people. If we don't trust this US lawyer and we want someone more reliable, well, here we have Mr. Jeff Bezos. A few years ago, Mr. Jeff Bezos banned PowerPoint presentations and bullet points from the meetings he was having with the other Amazon executives and directors. But why so? Well, basically, his theory, and PowerPoint presentations are still banned nowadays in that company, is that bullet points, yes, are a very effective tool to summarize information, but they basically hinder people from expressing their communication skills and their involvement in the matter that was with which they were dealing. So here we start to see how people from the ancient world and people in the modern business world are relying on stories as a really effective mean of communication. And there's actually more. Why are stories so compelling? One of the explanations is provided to us by Jeffrey Sachs, who is a neuroscientist, the director of the Dynamic Cognition Laboratory in Washington University of St. Louis. And what he says is that every time we hear a story, we listen to a song, we watch a movie, we read a book, we are in touch with stories. And while we are in touch with stories, our brain automatically pictures them. So it's just like if we were living that specific moment in real life. Again, also in this case, some studies were conducted, and what they found out is that every time we use especially words connected to our five senses, here, for instance, we have some other words like mint, rose, or also words related to movements like pick, kick, or lick, we are activating the parts of the brain of our audience's brains that usually process those information. So if right now I start talking about the rose, you will all feel like if you were smelling one. So storytelling actually is a bit about chemistry and science. And here we have three hormones which actually play a key role in storytelling. They are dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphin. The first one I would like to introduce to you is dopamine. Dopamine is the hormone related to focus, to attention, to motivation. So if in our communication we are able to basically include some suspense moments or maybe some cliffhangers, well, that's the exact time in which people will want to hear more about what you're saying. People will be hooked in the narrative. So dopamine is one of the chemical ingredients we can use. Then there is something more that can help us create a deeper bond, an even deeper bond with our audience, which is oxytocin. Oxytocin is the empathy hormone. It's about really creating a trust relationship between people. This is typically generated by using, I don't know, sentences like, okay, I know you just had lunch, but I really hope you will find this storytelling webinar interesting. Or something like, I know how you're feeling. I've been there, but trust me on this, I will guide you through the whole process. Then we have endorphin. Endorphin is an hormone about relax, lotters. So it's typically what our brains produce when we are laughing, we're watching a comedy at the cinema. So these are the chemical foundations of storytelling, which we can actually unleash with three key ingredients, which are, I would say, the main pillars of storytelling. They are the SCR structure, empathetic characters, and multisensoriality. We will start with the first one. SCR is an acronym that stands for situation, complication, and resolution. And it's, I would say, the founding pillar of all the movies we've watched, the books we've read. So the situation is the initial context in which the narrative takes place. To just make a simple example, it's like having the prince and the princess living in a castle, they're happy and having fun. Then there's the complication. Well, that's when the challenge starts. Something bad happens. In this case, in the case of our example, we have a monster that gets to the castle, kidnaps the princess. Then at this point, the hero, the main character, has to face a lot of challenges, has to overcome a lot of obstacles to finally reach the last stage of this framework, which is the resolution. So in this case, the prince will kill the monster and will save the princess. So this is how the problem is actually solved. And again, when talking about these three parts, the situation, the complication, and the resolution with executives or professionals, usually they believe that the most important one is the resolution. because that's the key to solve our issues. That's how we are going to overcome the challenges we are facing. But actually, from a narrative standpoint, well, decomplication is the moment in which people will start to really listening to what you're saying. They want to know more about problems you encountered, about issues you were facing. And if we want to be even more precise, the complication can be divided even in two other moments, I would say. The first one is the catalyst, which is the initial challenge, the first moment in which a problem appears. And then if we want to build up an even more compelling narrative, we can also introduce one or some more other all seems lost moments, which are basically moments in which actually it looks like our issue cannot be solved, but probably later we will find a solution. Now, I think we all can think about an example in which this framework was used in a book, in a movie, or in a song. But I would like also to give you another example from my experience as a consultant in which this framework was used in the executive summary of a very important report I had the pleasure to cooperate with. And this is a report in which my team has worked for the World Economic Forum. And the goal of it was to estimate the economic impact of some geosatellite technologies on the African continent's economy. So what we did here in the executive summary was exactly to follow the SCR framework. Let's take a look at the situation. It's in the first paragraph. We often hear that data and information is the 21st century's currency. This is why data democratization is so important. So this is the initial context, the context in which our report is taking place, in which our report will build some theories. Then, in the second paragraph, we have the complication. There's an issue. With the global COVID-19 crisis threatening the African economy and livelihood of its citizens, governments, industry leaders, NGOs, and CSOs are called on to utilize all the available data to respond, recover, and advance hindered efforts toward the achievement of global development priorities. So, okay, here we have a problem. There's the pandemic, and we should do something about it. Finally, in the final paragraph of this executive summary, we have the resolution, which is actually basically the project about which the report was. So Digital Earth Africa, the project, is an example of how fourth industrial revolution technologies can enable widespread socioeconomic development and so on. So once again, this is how a storytelling framework can also be implemented in a actually economic report, economic paper. Then we mentioned empathetic characters as the second ingredient of our storytelling cocktail. Well, I think we all know the woman in this picture. She is Mother Teresa, the nun involved in charity activities in developing countries. And actually, there's a communication framework, an effect, which was named after her. It's called the Mother Teresa effect. The idea is that when she was talking about the issues she was dealing with, she typically said things like, I don't know, maybe Malala is a 5-year-old girl who every day has to walk 5 kilometers down to the river to get some water and 5 kilometers back to her home to bring the water to her family. She was not saying things like, oh, every day 200 million children have issues in accessing water. She was making the story personal. And actually, it's by talking about that single child that she created an empathetic bond with the people who then happened to be interested in that cause, in that subject. Now, again, there are a lot of examples of companies creating characters to maybe promote their brands or maybe to promote their products. But at the same time, we can also here have an example. This is actually related to internal communication. It's an email sent by Tory Burch, the founder of the her fashion company, which is named after her. She wanted to share some updates about diversity and inclusion policies in her company. And what she did at the beginning of the email is using herself as a character. So here, for instance, we see that she says, from the very beginning, I aspired to create a brand that was synonymous with humanity. When I was growing up, my parents went to great lengths to create a community with people from all walks of life, teaching us firsthand that the similarities between us are far greater than our differences. So she's using herself as a character. This creates an empathetic bond, which is even stronger because she's also talking about her family. So she's making it really, really personal. We also have another quick example. This is actually from the Economist, the famous British review and newspaper. Again, here, when they're talking about the Conservative Party of their country, what they do initially is to introduce the matter by describing a character, which in this case is a conservative member of the parliament. What they say is, imagine a conservative member of the parliament, and your mind's eye might conjure up Philip Hammond. The former chancellor is tall, grey, and with a sense of humor that matches his fiscal policy, extra dry. So again, even these very reliable reviews are using storytelling techniques to make their messages more effective, more memorable. Now it's time to talk about the third and last ingredient of our storytelling mix, which is multisensoriality. So as said at the beginning, multisensoriality has to do with all those words, information, elements related to our five senses of vision, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. Now, what does this mean in, for instance, corporate communication or in a webinar like this? Does it mean that we constantly have to mention mint, rose, and flavors like that? Well, actually no, but occasionally dropping here and there some multisensorial details like, I don't know, the water drop, the raindrops on my window while I was working on this presentation, or I don't know, the hot air that hit my face when I landed in Suvarnabhumi airport, is something that will make the audience think about those images and that will make them live themselves in their own mind. Again, the multisensorial details are something that really helps us create a strong bond with the audience. If we think about what some very famous brands did, it's actually that. So let's take Tiffany and Hermes. If we see the Tiffany blue or the Hermes orange, we immediately recognize that those products are made by that brand. This is for sure something that is due to their color, but at the same time, it's not just a casual choice. So if we take a look at the Tiffany blue, well, it is actually scientifically proven that that color increases our heart rate, makes us happier, creates a desire to escape. And this is something useful because even if we will have a small stimulation in our brain, well, that will be immediately associated to the Tiffany brand in this case. So we will associate those feelings, those emotions to a brand that is making us feel good. And that's the power of multisensoriality. Or again, I mentioned Hermes. We all know that that kind of orange is something that now represents a sense of exclusivity, of luxury, of status. So if we see it, those are the things we think about, and we make the association exactly with their brand, and we are hooked in their narrative. So this was an overview of some of the most important ingredients, pillars of storytelling. Now, I would like also to share some tips when it comes to public speaking that can be paired to the techniques we have seen so far to make our communication more impactful. The first one is actually, some of you might find As often from
Okay, so we would request the participants to post their questions if you have any. And it was a pleasure to hear Mr. Mario. And we hope that if anyone is interested, we can also send you the the video if you want, but you have to write to us. We have our website. You can, we will post it in our website or in a YouTube. And if you just ask us, we will send it to you. So please feel free to ask any questions if you have. Okay, there is one question, one query. Do you have any advice on building a rapport from the audience, especially for ones that may not be receptive or even hostile? Mr. Mario, I repeat the question. Do you have any advice on building rapport for the audience, especially for one that may not be receptive or even hostile?
Thank you for the question. Yes, of course, whenever we are dealing with communication, we should always keep in mind that to make it effective, we should know our audience. So about the hostility, of course, I mean, that depends on the context. So it also depends on the way you frame the message, and it depends on the kind of hostility they're showing. But at the end of the day, if the audience is not receptive, the main idea is that you need to find why. Are they busy? Maybe they don't care about what you are saying, what you're writing in the report. So typically, a good advice, and something that proved to be very, very useful in my career in the past, is that you after the report, you also prepare like a very, very short summary, a separate document that you can share with the audience. It's something that will let them understand that you made also an additional effort for them. It's something you made exactly for them to save their time, to make sure that they take home the messages you want to deliver. So this is something pretty useful from a practical point of view. In general, all the techniques I shared in this webinar are something that appeal to the emotional side of people. So that's the way in which you can actually fight that hostility. Rely on empathy, rely on people's stories. That's something that typically works.
Thank you. And there is another question from Mr. Kanomi Kawazo. The question is, how to be confident in your presentation?
Yes, thank you again for the question. So also this question is pretty general. It depends on the speaker. It depends on the audience. Typically, what I find very, very useful is, of course, maybe to get ready, be prepared, but not too much. In every presentation, in every meeting, in every speech, or in every occasion in which you interact with an audience, you know that you cannot forecast all the things that will happen. So you will have to improvise a bit. What you want to do is to be prepared enough to be able to improvise in that moment. So practice is something that can generally help. And actually, it's something that typically happens. Great communicators are made, they're not born. If you take, I don't know, Adele, the singer, she used to be very afraid of going out on a stage. So what she did was, first she performed in small clubs, then in slightly bigger ones, and then she was able to perform also in stadiums and arenas. So again, also maybe doing something, not going immediately for the big thing, but practicing a bit more. It's something that can be useful. And then, as I said before, if that lack of confidence doesn't depend by the content of the presentation, doesn't depend by your preparation, but it's just like it depends about your fear of talking in public, again, breaking the ice before the meeting will remind you that at the end of the day, you're just talking to people. You will break that fear barrier and you will feel more confident 10 minutes after when you will talk in front of those people because you would have already talked with them before that moment in which you are under the spotlight.
There is another question from Tungish Upreti. The question is such a storytelling framework applicable for academic presentation? If so, how?
Just a question. For academic presentations, we mean like lectures, or we mean purely theoretical presentations? Because in lectures, I would say so. It's something that maybe you can use in an introduction. It's something that can generate engagement in the audience. You want people to go through all the things you're presenting, to all the things you wrote. So you need their attention. That's the most valuable currency, having their attention. Then, obviously, when it comes to academic content, well, that's pretty technical, that's pretty theoretical. For instance, there's a NASA scientist that explain what the dark matter is. So this is a very complex topic. That's a very complex topic, by using a comparison. So he said, imagine you're in the middle of the ocean, and at one point, it's night, it's fully dark, and at one point, you start seeing lights on the horizon. So you know that there's land there, but you can't tell if it's a city, if it's a mountain, if it's countryside. So this is exactly what happens with the dark matter. We see that it's there, but we don't know what it is. So look how with a short story, a short anecdote, a short comparison, he got the attention of the audience, and he could after talk more in depth about a complex theoretical concept like the dark matter.
We do not have any other questions at this moment. So we would like to thank everyone. And this AIT Extension organizes webinar regularly on different subjects. These are posted in our website, and you're always welcome to join. And these are regular features. So we would be happy if you can join with us. And if you have any questions after this also, you can write to us on this topic, on this webinar. And we would be looking forward to hear from you also. And we will be posting this webinar in our YouTube, which you can download from our website. Thank you very much for your participation. And once again, I would like to thank Mr. Mario Di Pinto. And if you have anything to say, please.
Thank you very much, everyone. It was a pleasure to be here, and I hope to hear from you soon. Thank you again.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Thank you.